Welcome to episode 108 of Broad Street Hustle. I'm your host, Tommy Nanny, bringing you a show tonight. A little atypical from our normal show. Not a ton to talk about as we are in the midst of the MLB season. The NBA is wrapping up in the conference finals. No football, no PGA, no horses. So we'll do a little bit of the show. We're going to recap the PGA from last week, the Preakness from last week, a little NBA predictions on the conference finals, Western Conference finals, and then we got a little treat for you. After that, where we get to dive into the mind of Christopher Michael Meeker, which can be dangerous, be very dangerous. So, if you got any drugs, you might want to take them for this show because you might need them. Before we start, we got a sponsor, Giovannina Pizza. Tried the rest, now tried the best. Grandma makes it best. All right, let's jump in. That's our sponsor. We got a sponsor now, yeah.
Where are they at?
We haven't got a location just yet, but
They're all
Jason,
over.
they're all over. A lot of online stuff.
Gotcha.
If you're So let's jump into our PGA recap. So Jason's going to go through some of the selections. Xander Schauffele won his first major, as we have bashed him many a time on the program here. Finally broke through. It was a little bit of a haywire tournament, as I'm sure you know. Scotty Scheffler gets arrested to start the second round. That kind of throws off his whole tournament. So the favorite, if you would have told us before the tournament started, the favorite's going to get arrested before the second round, probably would have changed some of the picks. But Jason, you have a recap for?
Yeah, so like you said, Schauffele finally came through. He led from wire to wire. I mean, he led at the end of every round. So I had mentioned it. We had all mentioned it. He's been on fire. I picked him as my last pick to win, and he came through. I would have did a lot better if the guy who finished second, DeChambeau, would have won, because he was, other than Scheffler, who was obviously everybody's top pick. DeChambeau was my other top pick. We do need to talk about Scheffler, because that whole incident cost Scheffler the tournament. He would have won that tournament if that didn't happen. I mean, he basically played on adrenaline on Friday and then just crashed on Saturday. He was strictly playing on adrenaline Friday, and then went home and probably couldn't sleep, or just was so tired and exhausted. He just crashed on Saturday, and he shot over par. It was like his first round over par, I think, all year. And then he came back with a big round on Sunday, but it was too little, too late. He still finished top 10, but so like I said, Schauffele came through -21. The scores were a little. I guess it happens with the PGA where the scores are really. They crush those courses.
I think the over under was only like -13 or -14, somewhere along there. So they absolutely demolished that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Saturday was the day that they really just. And that's called moving day, so I don't know if they make the pins easier on moving day or not.
My only problem too with the course was like that the fit 18 being that par 5 was like, I wasn't a fan of it. It was an easy.
It was easy.
Why do you finish on
Schauffele? You knew Schauffele was going to win. Like I was checking odds because I had both of them. Obviously, I would have won a ton more money if DeChambeau would have won, but I was checking odds to see if I could hedge, throw something on Schauffele, and you just couldn't do it because like he was like -200 going into the hole. Didn't know he was going to merge that hole.
The other thing too is these guys are such good lag putters. The greens are so massive. They just got to be on the green, and like they're putting for birdie. They're going to par. Where in other courses, if you overshoot or you undershoot, you're in the bunker, you're in the rough. Now up and down is a little tough. Up and down from 100 feet away on the green isn't hard for these guys. They're going to get it.
Right.
So that's why, you just didn't see big scores getting put.
Yeah. Another guy who kind of surprised me, and I know he surprised us because we didn't even mention his name, I don't think, last week, was Victor Hovland. I mean, he wound up having a great tournament. He finished third. He was up there. It was between Schauffele DeChambeau and Hovland going into the last couple holes, and he just, I think did he bogey a hole, or he did something. I think he bogeyed a hole, and then he was out of it. So he's back, I guess. He's a guy that I guess we have to keep in mind going forward. He wasn't a guy that, I don't think we even mentioned him for the Masters. He just was having a bad year this year, but
He had that
these
weird
guys,
swing kick going on. He was like trying to fix it. So
and I
yes,
think
he did.
he went
Yeah.
back to his old coach.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay.
Yeah, and I guess he fixed his swing. So he'll be dangerous going forward. But all in all, it was a fun tournament. I know, Tom, you gave out a really good long shot with Taylor Moore, right? I don't know what he wound up finishing, but he was up there for a while. I don't know. Did he get top 20? Do you know? Or
I believe
He
so.
tied well.
Yeah,
Okay.
I thought I was gonna
So-
say I thought he was top 50.
yeah. Our cut bet did not work out well. Chalky and our Bati was terrible. He never even gave us a chance. So we were pretty much out of it because he just didn't have a chance. And then Straka wound up, Chalky's pick, Straka wound up. Well, no, he was the last hole. He was right there, and then I think he even bogeyed that hole. So, just a bad bet by us. So we'll try to put one together again for the U.S. Open. And then we did have that draft. Tom, I think you had two guys that didn't make the cut, so you
That's
were
my
eliminated.
standard. My standard.
And then I had a good draft. I mean, I had DeChambeau, I had Schauffele, I had Koepka. And I had Thigala, who right there, up until I guess the back nine of Sunday. So, I mean, all in all, I think we had a really good podcast last week for pick. I know I profited. Hopefully, everyone out there took our advice on some picks and made some money. And we have the U.S. Open show coming in the second week of June. So
Yeah, Father's Day weekend. So. Chalky, anything to add? Move on to the Preakness.
Yeah, well, it's nice that the time I get the first pick and actually take Scheffler or Holland would have been the better choice in the end, since I made that mistake. And
that was just bad luck, though.
player.
He would.
Yeah, I mean,
would've
the other thing too with Saturday, I mean, obviously, and he said, Friday was the day warm out. But I think the other thing that played a factor too is that his caddy was out on Saturday. His caddy flew home for his kid's high school graduation. He had somebody else in the bag. Now, you can't say that was the main reason, but the 3 rounds his caddy was there was, 4 under, 6 under, 6 under, I think it was. And then he shot 2 or 3 over or whatever it was on Saturday. The one round his caddy wasn't there. So that combined with the just the adrenaline letdown on Saturday. I mean, not to say he would have shot 4 under had the caddy been there, but the caddy might have been able to calm him a little bit. And if he saves 2 shots on Saturday, it could be a little bit of a different story on Sunday. But yeah, I mean, that's going to be crazy to see play out, because if you saw the video get released today, like he didn't do anything.
That cop's bad news too. I don't know
bad.
who's
Like,
up on that cop.
I mean,
He's
everything's
clown.
dropped and the cop's going to get suspended or fired. I mean, that's pretty much what you
Yeah, I mean, it said, the report he filed said he drug him. Like, the cop never left his feet, never got drugged. I don't know how his $80 pants got ripped. Like, you can't see any of it. It's kind of insane. But they said, like, he's like the nicest guy on the tour. So for that to happen to him, unfortunate, since I had him and we all had him in bet. But yeah, crazy.
All right. All right, let's move on to the Preakness. That disaster. So the winner was Seize the Gray, was the horse that won the Pate Mouth, stretching out the Dwayne Lucas horse. Not necessarily projected to be on the lead, since the outside horse was the fastest one. But after we did the podcast, the next day, the favorite scratched immediately. So that screwed up kind of all the pick right there. But regardless, and I said it to Chalky and Jason, I personally think the race was fixed. Okay, whether you believe it or not, to afford Dwayne Lucas to win, because he's 89, he's running out of, races to run. I mean, him and Baffert were all chummy before the race, and the Baffert's horse the 9 horse, decides not to go to the lead, who is the fastest horse in the race. Not only not go, completely let the horse go, and decide to stalk him, what, 4 or 5 wide the
In the
entire
middle,
race?
in the middle of the
Which
track.
blocks the rest of the field from thinking like, oh, thinking the race is faster than it really is. All the other horses take. So I think it was fixed. I mean, personally, I don't know. You don't have to believe it, but I think the race was fixed. I think it's a crooked sport, and they're probably 2 of the most crooked trainers out there. So I think it was fixed. I don't know, Jason.
Possible. I don't know. It certainly looked shady. If not, Frankie Dettori had one of the most baffling rides that you've ever seen, because, like you said, he had the horse out in the middle of the track,
Which they said
Okay.
was not the place to be at. Like the rail was, anytime I read
Yeah.
the rail was always.
So, like, what is he doing? Like, the horse had no chance to win there. Now, could the horse have won if he pressured Seize the Gray? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, maybe. But if he did pressure him, then we would have had the pace scenario that we assumed was going to happen. And then, I started, actually, as the day went on, I started to kind of think that Mr. Dan had a chance. And I started to throw him in. I threw him in a couple of bets because I was like, feels really not that good.
What's also funny though, the only time that Tory takes the horse off of the 5 path is when Mystic Dan starts to make his move. If you notice, the Tory comes over to Seize the Gray to try to block Mystic Dan again, and he did at first, stop him,
Yeah.
and then he got through it.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, I mean, the track played a part because you really couldn't close on the track. I mean, I was watching all day. Speed was holding. And the horse just got an easy lead, and he just kept going. Mystic Dan made a run at him, couldn't get by him. The rest of the horses in the field just either didn't
and
the
like
track or
Brown's
just
horse,
weren't good enough.
he got out of gate, and
They were saying he didn't like the track.
yeah, you could tell he didn't
didn't
want
like
to
the
leave
track.
for that.
Yeah, Chasing Freedom, I just think he is what he is. He's a horse that's just not good enough, but he's good enough to.
He's always going to be paced in it.
Yeah, he's good enough to get the board, but he's just not going to be good enough to win. So, it was just a disappointing race. Few of those horses are going to go to the Belmont. Seize the Gray is going to the Belmont. Mystic Dan may or may not go. So, I won't bet a penny on Seize the Gray in the Belmont, and I probably won't bet a penny on Mystic Dan, but I think you're going to see them again in a couple weeks.
Yeah, Chalky.
Yeah, I turned the coverage off, so I didn't see any of the interviews afterwards, and I don't know if Dettori ever, made any comments as to why he rode the horse the way he did, but there was a video as Lucas was going to the winner's circle. He stopped to shake hands with Baffert, and he said to Baffert, "I thought you were going to be out there on the lead with us," and Baffert's response was, "Yeah, we were supposed to be." So,
oh, wow, I didn't see.
I don't know if that was a strategic move on the Tory's part or whatever the instructions were. As somebody was saying, the horse just wasn't fast enough to get. I mean, Seize the Gray didn't set blazing fraction, so I mean, the horse could have been on the lead if the Tory wanted to put him right there, or at least put him closer. Bottom line, but even if he wasn't that fast, the Tory gave him no chance to win the race by riding it the way he did. Either way, it just I did not have it bet. Not a dime on that horse. I said it. If I would known Muth was scratching when we did the podcast, I still wouldn't have had the horse anywhere. Great story for Lucas, whatever, but not really. But on the Belmont.
Yeah, I mean, and for us too, like picking a winner on a Tuesday when the race is Saturday, then finding out the favorite scratches the next day, and then the track being away, like it's hard to figure out. But Chalky's point, I mean that horse, I wouldn't have picked that horse.
Yeah.
And the fact he was like 9-1 was pretty outrageous. That's terrible.
Well, is that because of the My Racehorse stuff?
Possible.
Or he was but nobody really had big odds. What was the biggest odds? Like 15.
Yeah, even that horse, I think he's still running Magato. Like,
yeah,
17-1.
Right. So, let's move on. NBA Eastern Conference Finals, Western Conference Finals. Quickly, both series have a game played already. So it's 1-0 for Boston. They play tonight. 1-0 for Dallas, who won last night. Quickly, we'll do Boston. Boston's minus 1,200 to win that series. I mean, Pacers' chance was game 1. I don't really see them having much of a chance. I don't know if they win a game. I mean, I think at the most they win 1 and the series goes 5. Meeker, we haven't talked to you. What do you think on the Eastern Conference Final?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think, last night or whenever it was, a couple nights ago when they played game 1, that was Indiana's shot to win a game on the road to start the series. I mean, I think Indiana is a better team than people give them credit for. I mean, they did beat up Knicks team to get to get here, but they are deep. They have some scorers. They're a good team, but I think now that they lost the game that they should have won, I don't know what the odds are. You can tell me for a sweep, but I think it could possibly be a sweep at this point. We know who Boston is. Boston lives and dies by the 3. But they play good defense. They're a good team. They're probably the best team in the NBA. But I think if Indiana was going to have any shot at making this a series last night, the other night was the game that they had to win, and they had the game won, and they just were sloppy in the last 3 possessions, gave the ball away. And now I think that they've dug a hole at this point, and they might go down in 4.
Yeah, chalky. I mean, for everybody too. Like, why do you not foul? I just don't get why.
Why not call them out when that was doing?
But why, when you're up 3, why are you not fouling? I don't understand. Why are you giving it?
It was trying to foul him. I don't know how to explain it to you. Like, he was close enough to grab him. He was close enough to foul him, but maybe he thought that the ref would call if he just leaned in a little bit.
Yeah, but what Tommy's saying is the coach should tell them to foul.
Yeah, like you're not. It's no like open to interpretation. Well, just do it a little bit. Maybe like take the guy's head off, so the official calls a foul. And like I don't, and I get it with the
you're just going to play him plus the ball and they get the ball. I mean, look,
I don't actually mean take his head off.
No,
there's a way in the NBA.
Fouling would be the move, but I think the way the ball was inbounded, I mean, Brown had it pretty quick in the corner. Like, you really didn't have time to foul and not having it called as a shot.
He had chance. If you tell the coach tells the guy to make the foul him as soon as the ball's inbounds, they're going to foul.
I mean, he's got to get the possession first, and then Brown went up fairly quick with a pump fake at least. So if Siakam sees him doing that, he's not going to foul him right away. I mean, it was not the easiest play to foul. I mean, had they gone into the top of the key and they tried to run a play, yes, you foul immediately. But regardless, I think with, the Pacers might have been able to force it to 6. Now they'll be lucky to get the 5. I mean, that was the game. You had a deal. I mean, they were down in the 3rd quarter and then they came to have the lead. And you blow the lead, that lead in the last minute like that, that takes away any momentum you would have had. And they'll probably get 1, but I don't know if it's more than that. Since the game's ongoing, the lines are down as far as the series odds, so I can't give you that one on that just yet, Meeker. But I think, and they might be good games. I mean, look, the first 2 games of both series were both very good, close down to the end games. So it'll be entertaining. But I don't think they can get 4 in the next 6 against Boston, and they probably can't even get 2. So it's probably going to be 5.
Jason?
Well, I could tell you guys one thing. If we go revisit our draft, you guys better root for the Pacers, because I still have left the Celtic, the Timberwolves, and the Mavericks, and you guys have nobody left. So the only way that you don't owe me
Anyone take the
dinner,
Pacers at all? No
one
one
took the Pacers.
No, I had
be for
both
the
my teams
Pacers.
got eliminated in the last round.
Yeah. And Chalky's was the last hope with the Nuggets. So, anyway, I disagree with you guys. I still think it's going to be a series. I think the Pacers are a lot better than people think. I keep hearing how the Knicks had injuries and this and that, and the Pacers outplayed them. They just outplayed them. They outplayed them in Game 7. They outplayed them. They outplayed the Knicks, and they're not a bad team at all. And I think the series is going to go 6 games. I still think Boston's going to win, but I don't know. I don't think it's a sweep. I don't think it's going 5. And
So
I think
where are the Pacers winning tonight or no?
no, I don't think they win tonight.
So,
I
the
think
2 at home?
they could win both of them at home, or they could win one at home and Boston could win one, and then maybe come back and steal a game at Boston Garden here. They get hot. They shot 67% in that game against the Knicks.
Yep.
They get hot.
40% against Boston.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They get hot, man. They have guys that they're.
What's Porzingis? What's his status?
He's not playing till game 4.
Game 4.
He's not coming back till game 4, and he'll make a big difference for sure.
Defensively too. I mean, he clogs up the hope in the lane a little more.
And he's a tough matchup, because he's 7 foot and he's playing the perimeter and stuff. So he'll make a difference. But I think it's going to be an interesting series. Boston's a choke team. They just really are.
Yeah.
Tatum, to me, Tatum's a little soft. I don't know. He
Totally
disappears
agree.
too much.
Totally agree.
He disappears too much.
Yeah, I mean, he had 36, and it was like.
But he was awful in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
He had all those points in overtime.
It was Brown, and like there's the points you remember, not Tatum's points as much. And Derek White's starting to like. I don't know what happened to him.
Well, Derek, I have some MVP bets on him, so I'm hoping he kind of takes off. I have him like 80-1 for Finals MVP and like 60-1 for Eastern Conference Finals MVP. But yeah, I'll say Celtics in 6.
All right, moving on to the Western Conference Finals. Dallas have the 1-0 lead, and they're sitting at still only minus 165 for the series. I mean, the game's in Minnesota, so I could even up the series. That's probably why. Chalky, what thought?
So, I mean, I would have thought I was the only one that predicted Minnesota to get out of the first round, from this group, but I certainly didn't have them beating Denver. So the fact that they hung there, and I mean, that game 7, I mean, they were, no, what was the blowout game? Was that game 5 they blew them out?
Game 6 was the blowout game.
Well, Denver won
they
game
won by
6
like
to get back to. But I mean,
Minnesota won game 6.
They won by 40-something points.
Yeah, Minnesota's
one
won.
game.
Denver
Well,
was up 3-2 from this series.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so but Denver was up in game 7, and then Minnesota went on a run to close it out and win the game. So, I mean, the thing, and I don't disagree that with Jason that Boston has choked in so many situations. They're habitually been in the Eastern Conference Finals. They've only gotten the one finals appearance so far with a couple of these guys. But when you look at the other teams, like your really seasoned veteran that has any experience is Kyrie, and he's never been to a finals that didn't have LeBron playing next to him. So it'll be interesting to see who on these other teams can sort of make their mark, aside from him already, I guess. But, I like Edward. I mean, he's cocky, he's brash, but kid has no fear. So if this Minnesota team can finish out the series, I'm not going to short them in the finals just because they don't have anybody that hasn't really gotten there playing a big role. Because they'll have some veteran leadership with Conley. Towns has been playing well, and you got a kid with no fear in Edwards. So I'm going to say Minnesota gets the series in 6. It's Minnesota-Boston in the NBA final.
Jason?
Yeah, I agree with Chalky. I think it's going to be a long series, though. It's this is going 7. I think. I think Minnesota will even the series tomorrow, or whenever the next game is, Friday or Saturday. But they will. This is going to go 7. They'll probably split in Dallas, and then. I don't know what'll happen in game 5 and 6, but I still pick Minnesota in 7. They got a nice team. I mean. Anthony Edwards he's a superstar, right? Cat is Karl Anthony Towns is turned into a good number 2. He's another tough matchup. Good shooter. Gobert, he's not going to do anything offensively, but he's a difference rebounding and defensively. I think the the real guy who's really important in the series is McDaniels because he's so good defensively. You know, he's going to probably be on Kyrie, maybe Luka. I don't know, if he's going to switch off them or but he's very important. I actually bet him at 120-1 to win MVP of this series. So I know Anthony Edwards was saying, they asked him after last series who's the unsung hero, and he immediately said McDaniels. So
Is
I
that
don't
the
know,
team the
maybe
Sixers had?
nah, it's a different one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a different one. So
It's one that's pretty.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
this
why.
one-
That's
this
what I
one's
was
good.
asking. Right?
So I bet him 120-1 to win MVP here and 300 to win MVP in the finals. I think if they get by, I think they'll give Boston all they can handle, and I actually think they'll win the finals as well. So, but I have Minnesota in 7.
Yeah, I actually had Dallas at 7. I think Chalky, you sure changed Kyrie a little bit. I think him being that
I
type
think
of
he's great.
yeah, I think he's the one guy in the series that can be the killer. In like if in a game 7, just kind of taking over the role, hitting the big
Never
shot.
lost a closeout game.
So I mean, I think if anything, I think Luka holds him back a little bit, personally, because I think Luka is just too
He's out of shape.
He's just
why is he?
ball dominant and like just takes bad shots.
But
Yeah,
if he
he's
got
like
in
an
better
old-
shape, he's fat. Like if he got
And-
better shape, he'd.
I don't know how he moves some of some of the plays he made, but I do. I think he takes bad shots. He controls the ball a little too much. I mean, these guys that's getting triple doubles, I get it, but I do think Kyrie is the one that could be the killer in the series, and for that I lean towards Dallas for in 7. Meeker?
I think it's a coin flip series. I think it's going to go 7. I'm going to take Minnesota. And, Anthony Edwards has to be the Superman, I think, and I think he can be, let's put it this way, in one of these games and just take over a game. Because I think for them to be able to get enough points, he's got to have one to win a game like that. He's going to have to step up. I think the big X factor for Minnesota is Naz Reid. This is the kind of guy I would love to have on the Sixers. What is he, 6th man of the year? Did he win 6th man of the year?
I bet him 55-1. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and look, and I don't think any of us consistently watch the Minnesota Timberwolves during the regular season, but obviously during the playoffs, we get to see them play. This guy is a beast when he comes in the games. He's all over the court, plays good defense, gets the tough rebounds, kind of guy you would love to have on the Sixers. But I think really it comes down to, look, Luka and Kyrie are going to score anywhere from 60 to 70 points in a game, pretty much every game. So I think where Minnesota can win is more of their front court against Dallas's front court. If Edwards and Conley had a really bad game the other night, Edwards and Conley can kind of keep it close to like what, say, Luka and Kyrie score 65, they can score 45, 50 between the two of them. Then I think the front court of Minnesota, defensively and offensively, can factor into a win. And when you add Reid to that mix. And I think it's going long, like you said, Jason. I think it's a 7-game series. Dallas is a good team, but I think Minnesota takes it in 7. Dramatic fashion, too. I'd like to see that.
I also have a bet on Karl Anthony Towns to win the Finals MVP at 35-1 because, Edwards is so heavily favored to be, their best player in any round that you're getting value on these other guys. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns could easily go all.
Yeah, and look at the game 7 in Denver. I mean, Edwards didn't do anything special.
Exactly, he was bad in that.
He didn't do anything special the other night. Really.
Right. So I think there's value if you guys think the Timberwolves have a chance to win the championship. There's value on guys to win MVP in that series.
I think they just shot way too many threes the other night. I looked at
That's
the
how
stats.
they play. That's their game.
I know they play like that. They're a little bit like Boston in that way, but 49 threes. I mean, that's a little bit too much. You're shooting 30-something% at some point in time. Maybe you shouldn't be taking a million threes in a close game, but it was a tough game, good game. Luka dominated the fourth quarter, as fat as he is. So one of the best players in the NBA. not the best.
All right. Well, it's time. We delve into the mind of Meeker. God help us here. 4 questions. How many questions do you have?
Five.
5 questions.
Five.
All right. So we still be mindful of time here because we want to kind of keep it to the normal mark that we do. These were not pre-screened. I did not see them. Jason did not see them. Chalky did not see them.
I have no idea.
So we'll
That's what makes it fun.
get the dump button ready, Chalky. We don't know what we're going to hear here. So Meeker, take over.
Now these are just, we're going to go around each Philadelphia sports team and just ask one question about each team and then one that's kind of all sports related. But I'll start with the Flyers. So you look around the NHL landscape and you see most of the teams in the playoffs who have elite offensive talent who are European players. Dallas, Rangers have Zibanejad, Panarin, Florida's got Barkov, Edmonton, Draisaitl. Why haven't the Flyers been able to develop any European stars like the rest of these teams? I think that's one of the biggest reasons why they are not a good team. Tell me, Jason, why is that? Does this go way back to Bobby Clark?
No, this goes back to
The ownership.
correct. They refuse to rebuild the way you need to rebuild. So when you're drafting 15th and 14th and 13th and 12th, you're not going to get Barkov. You're not going to get Draisaitl. You're not getting any of these guys. And that's why they continue to be in purgatory. And this is the old adage that we go back to the Sixers and what they did with tanking or whatever you want to call it, the process or whatever, because they realized that when you continually draft in the late part of the first round, you're never going to get a star. The Flyers don't have a number 1 center, and they don't have a number 1 defenseman. And you ain't getting one if you're not drafting high, because nobody's giving them away. And they'll continue to be middling, and just like they were this year, right? They were okay. Maybe they'll get in the playoffs and get slaughtered in the first round or whatever. And they didn't make playoffs. And now they have a mediocre draft pick, and they'll continue to be mediocre until they decide to rebuild the right way.
Well, why is it that they, even with you being said, like, why isn't it that they've never been able to develop a good European player? I
You're
understand.
not developing. There is no developing European players. There's draft.
Well, they could.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're
They don't
drafting in the
draft
top 5.
Who did they draft that they traded that they didn't develop? Provorov. Provorov turned out to be not that good. Not that he's not that good. He turned out to be not a true number 1 defenseman. I still think he's a very good number 2 defenseman, but they were playing him as a number 1 defenseman.
I mean, I think as far as trading away, and until recently, he's had very limited playoff success. It's probably Bobrovsky. I mean, he's multiple-time Vezina winner that they traded away.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
Brandon Brizgalov, but until last year, he had that one playoff series win up until last year when they.
Yeah, but I mean, that's how many years ago? How many years ago was that? That's
2010.
It's a while ago.
15 years ago, 14 years ago. I mean, you're talking about a generation ago.
Well, yeah, 11, 12, I guess. Yeah.
Been bad for a generation. That's the problem.
Been bad for 20 years.
It just goes back to our comment, like Jason said. They kept the Giroux and the Voraceks and these guys that kept them relevant in the grand scheme of being mediocre, but not like even this year where they were they weren't bad enough. They couldn't be bad enough.
No.
They played hard, and they
got a decent player for Giroux. I mean, Tippett's a good player. He's a good young player. But you know how much you could have got for Giroux if you traded him when you should have traded him
5 years.
5 years ago?
They waited to make anything. We were on here saying about trading Carter Hart. Now, less things were already known, but
yeah, I think things were known about that. Yeah,
so now that's a wash. I mean, it's Provorov. They've made a move on. You can go through, but yeah, when's the last time they drafted in the top 5? Van Riemsdyk?
Well, they got the guy who had
Nolan Patrick.
Patrick. So that was a little bit of bad luck with that, but they also bypassed Meeker. right? So that's poor drafting. McCarr went right after Patrick and Patterson. There was
Well,
guys
they
in
did
that
draft
draft.
that Russian this year, so we'll see.
Yes, that was a good pick, and that it sounds like he might be coming over next year. So, but I think it's going to hurt them that one kid didn't want to play for Tortorella, and forced them to trade him.
Yeah, he was a good
Cutter
prospect.
Oh, he's
College.
one of the best prospects in the league. Gauthier.
You weren't a fan of
So-
him. You weren't a fan of him when they drafted him. But
No, because he sounded like he was like another one of those big,
we called that
power
one. We called that
forward.
one live, and I remember that was you were less than
Yeah.
thrilled we did that. But
yeah, but he
I-
turned into he's a sniper.
yeah, I mean, I think okay, Tortorella might have been the right coach at the time, but Tortorella's shelf life is just about over. So you got to figure out who's coming in next. And
I feel like there might have been more to that too, besides just Tortorella. But I don't know.
yeah, maybe. I mean,
don't know.
the kid. Well, his stories were inconsistent or whatever. But I mean, right now the best chance to make your question the Flyers have to getting relevant is they have a Russian goalie and they have a Russian forward, and if they both turn out to be studs, then those will be building blocks for some of the other guys. But if they're good, you're not necessarily going to get that top 5 pick.
You're still not going to get that.
Yeah.
Oh.
So you got to kind of hope to get a little lucky in a trade or something else where guys just kind of outplay their expectations. Like when Clark made a couple of those trades when he came back. I mean, Leclerc was a decent player, but he wasn't a 50-goal scorer, and then he blossomed into that. A couple of the pieces that they put around Lindros that sparked that 10-year run. And, like I said, Meekop's going to be Lindros, but, there wasn't a whole lot of talent on the team at that time, and he got a couple pieces in, and you got Desjardins, who was a veteran player. So maybe there's moves like that to be made, but they got a lot of work to do.
What they're going to have to hope for is there's a team like in a market that's not making
If
money.
you can
or
hear that
whatever.
siren, that was the police saying we've talked too much hockey on the.
All right, one more quick point.
Time to move on.
One more quick point. I think they got to find one of these teams that has a young player who's coming up for their big contract that they can't afford, right? And then you're going to have to go after him. I don't know who that guy is, but it's got to be a number 1 center or a number 1 defenseman.
And it's got to be on a low team, a market that's who had.
It's got to be in Anaheim or
whoever these teams are. that have
Utah or
low-
Winnipeg.
Columbus.
Yeah.
Winnipeg, Columbus, right? Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the Sixers. All right, the Sixers move into this offseason with the opportunity to revamp their roster, as we have spoken about, and we have discussed some of the players that we all would like to see them sign. But if you could snap your fingers and add any former Sixer to the roster who is still playing in the NBA today, who would it be? And not necessarily a guy who's available right now. Who would you like to see back in a Sixer uniform, if any? Don't take into consideration the cap status or their contract status.
Bridges. I mean, we want Bridges, right? He was a former Sixer.
For 20 minutes, but it counts for my, as far as I'm concerned.
Guy.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I would say Bridges.
We're really counting him.
I mean, I'll give a different answer. I would love to have Bridges too, but I'll say Butler.
I mean, I don't. It's one of those two if you count Bridges. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, just go through some of their former players. Who would it?
well,
I mean, TJ McConnell would be a good backup.
I'll give you another name.
right, but he's not making a difference to win a championship right now.
No.
I'll give you a name. He's like a secondary piece. Like if they swing and miss some of these others that could make them a better team. That's Jeremy Grant. He makes them
Jeremy
a better
Grant's
team.
Yeah.
He's not going to be a star, but he might be a good fit on this team. And he was a process Sixer. But
My only question about him is he the type of guy who's just good on bad teams?
well, it could be that. I mean, Harris was that way. With some of those bad
Yeah,
teams,
another
so
Tobias Harris. Right.
completely
exactly.
possible. But
But he wasn't a bad Sixer. They were just a bad team.
Oh, that's what.
Grant, yeah.
Yeah, but he wasn't
I said
bad.
he's a good
Yeah, I
player on a
understand
bad team.
Saying, but I mean, yeah. I mean, so he has never been on a good team, so we don't know how player he
I
really
mean,
is.
all I'm saying
Maybe.
is if their big acquisition in the offseason is Grant, we're going to be
Yeah,
on this
it's not-
podcast bitching
that's
that
a
the Sixers are
problem.
going to stink.
I mean, he might be their biggest trade possible acquisition. Let's just say if Bridges is not available and Butler's not available. I mean, you could trade for Grant and still sign Paul George in theory.
Sounds like OG is not a guarantee to go back.
I
to
just
the
saw
Knicks.
that too. Yeah, but
My
he didn't
would
run that well in New York.
have been Drew Holiday. I'd like to see him back in his.
Yeah, he would help.
Oh, yeah. No, that's yeah.
help.
I completely forgot him. No idea.
Yeah, he would help.
I mean,
We'll move
Jason and
on
I,
to
when the Lillard trade went down, Jason and I both were hoping the Sixers could find a way to get Holiday back. He would have been a good fit.
And it turns out that's a bad trade for the Bucks because
Yeah.
Holiday's a much better fit than Lillard is.
Okay, we'll move on to the Phillies. The Phillies are off to their best start in history. In my opinion, the best Phillies team I may have ever seen was in 2011. Whose starting staff was like 70 and 30 something. Holiday, Lee, Hamels, Oswalt, Vance Worley was even 11-3. But that team, amongst the Utley injury, the Lidge injury, and disappointing offensive production towards the end of the season, landed them a first round out and essentially end their run as the elite team in the National League. Is this Phillies team better? And what do they need to do to assure that they do not suffer the same fate as the 2011 Phillies? Do they need to add to the mix offensively, the bullpen, another starter, or does this play out as it is? What do you think?
Pick somebody.
Jason.
Jeez. Okay, so I said back in 2011 that I thought it was a mistake for them to put all their eggs in one basket and have an unbelievable pitching staff and totally neglect the lineup, which is what happened. They had a great staff and they couldn't hit. So I think this is a better team all around than 2011. I think they're right there. I don't think they need anything in the lineup. I don't. Trey Turner comes back. I'm not moving JT Realmuto out of second in the line in the order. He has just been really good as the number 2 hitter. So now, where are you putting Trey Turner? You're going to bat him 6th? Trey Turner's going to hit 6th in the lineup. I think they want to go lefty righty. So I was thinking Schwarber, JT, Harper, Bohm, probably Stott, Turner, and then Marsh, and then Castellano. I don't think there's anything you need to do with that lineup. I think the bench is good. Sosa's really good off the bench. I would keep Clemens over. I would get rid of Merrifield somehow, trade him or something, and keep Clemens up. I like Pache. This might be crazy, but I like Pache better than Rojas, to be honest with you, because I don't think Rojas is anything special in the field. And Pache is just as good as him in the field, and he's a much better hitter. I would like to see a better backup catcher, but they're probably not going to do that. But they need if they get a closer, they're going to win the World Series. I don't know what it's going to cost. I would do it regardless of what it costs, because if you get a young closer like Mason Miller from Oakland, you're going to have to give up a lot. But
They were saying, I saw something today about Adam Miller and then obviously Abel. And then
they're great prospects.
possibly a guy on the roster now, like
probably Kirkering, I would think, would be
Yeah.
the guy that you would have to get on the roster. And I would do it. The guy, he's under club control. He's 23 or 25. I forget which one he is. But if it wins you a World Series and makes you a contender for the next 3 years, you do it. And Dombrowski will, because that's the way he runs. He don't care about prospects. He tries to win.
Chalky.
All right, what was the question again? Is this better than 2011? I'm not ready to go there yet, only because, and obviously, if they go 500 the rest of the year and win 90-something games, win the World Series, it's going to be a better team than 2011. That was the way the history books should be written. But you say, well, they didn't focus on hitting, but that lineup. Yes, Howard was slowing down a little bit. Utley, you just look at that lineup. There's still names there that could hit. They just went cold at the wrong time. And the work, Pence was a downgrade from Worth, but Pence still did okay. He wasn't bad, better than Castellanos for sure right now when he got here. But I mean, like, you had Holiday and Lee. You had 2 Cy Young winners at the top of your rotation. And look, this starting staff is now 17 games of 7 innings or more, leads the league. And they've already had more games where their starters gone 7 innings than a third of the league did all of last year. So, the bullpen is where I would go. Same thing as Jason. And starter, maybe you're good with your top 3 and you just look for a smaller piece. Ultimately, I think I'm not ready to declare this team better than 2011. It's going to be where they end up, and probably need to win the World Series to get that from me. But they're on the right track.
Tommy?
Yeah. So 2 things. One, I mean, I think, and I'll probably get beat up for this, but I was on record back. I'm not a Charlie fan. I think he was a bad coach. And I think he hurt that team in 2011 with his stubbornness to never change the lineup, to just keep doing what worked for the last 5 years that was no longer work. And I think that's ultimately caught up to them. And then in that game 5 showed when they had 0 runs and they had 5 games where they played the exact same lineup, where La Russa had 5 games where he played a different lineup in all 5 games. Was it a difference? I don't know. But so Charlie, one thing for me. So I think this team is better. To agree more with Jason, where I don't really see many holes. And just quickly, I mean, we could do it together. And keep in mind, we're not talking about career. We're talking about where those guys were at that current year, where a lot of these guys were starting to hit the down part of their careers. Howard, obviously with the injury, really kind of it propelled it. But when you go catcher was Ruiz versus JT. Who do you want on that team versus this team at that current time? I'm taking JT.
Of course.
Howard or Harper?
Harper.
Utley or Stott?
Utley was hurt that year, so that was a problem.
Rollins or Turner?
That's close.
That's close.
I mean, but
Toronto
at that
or
point,
Palmer?
Rollins was trying to become Ricky Henderson at that point, right? He turned into trying to hit 30 home runs a year. So I would go Turner. Rollins defensively.
Yeah.
Ralph.
Yeah. Polanco or Bone?
Raul.
Banez or Marsh?
I'll take Raul there.
Different types of players, and for this team, Marsh really fits. So
Yeah, I don't
if
think
you just
there's
go
a
guy for
difference.
guy, you'd probably say Banez, but Victorino or Rojas Pache. I mean, that's and then right field was Pence or Castellano. I mean, to me they were almost a wash. I mean, I didn't find.
Yeah,
I
I would take Pence probably.
And then
Yeah.
300 hitter, like, I mean,
he was on the Phillies,
it's close to it.
Yeah, now you have a Schwarber because there's a DH.
and now it's a
so
DA.
there's
That's
that.
true too.
Yeah.
Now you have a big bat. Yeah. So I think it's definitely this team. And I mean, I don't know. How do they change their fate? Who knows? I mean, it's hard. If they knew how to do that, every team would do that. But yeah, I mean, adding a closer is probably going to be your biggest advantage. But I think it was 2 different parts, like of their, they won in 08, and not that they weren't hungry and not wanting to win. Like, this team was close now for 2 years. They blew it last year in the conference finals or pennant. And they lost the World Series year before. Like, this team is hungry as they get. You could see it day in and day out. They want to win every game. They remind you of the 93 Phillies, where like losing was not an option. Winning was. Where was that? That team won 104 games, basically just showing up to the ballpark. But I don't know if they had that same killer in them as this team has. So this
I
team
think Utley
Yeah.
is probably the only guy. Utley and Victorino were the only guys in that team that had like that kind of killer.
That's a good point. I mean, the Phillies had already won the World Series, but were still a really, really, really good team and weren't trying to get to the top of the mountain. They had already been to the top of the mountain. They were trying to get back to the top of the mountain. And that might be the difference.
And you
Like,
can
that's
see the, it's easy to say now looking back at it than when we lived in it, but you could see that that team, that era of that team starting to slowly slip away. Like, our window is closing. This is the year we got to do it. We added all these players on the pitching staff. This is the year because we're only going to run into more issues. Utley's getting older. Like you said, Rollins is. So it's like, looking back, it's easier, but you could just see that was it for them. Where this team didn't get there yet. They didn't get to where they want to get.
They're built for at least 3 years of contention.
And there's no reason why you're going to see. Yeah, and this pitching staff, I mean, the names aren't this big, but the numbers are just as good, if not better, actually, at this point in the season.
Been amazing. All right, let's go to the Eagles. The Eagles ended last season miserably and looked like one of the worst teams in the league over the last 6 games after a great start. Probably one of the more enigmatic seasons we've ever seen them have in recent memory. By all accounts, they had a decent offseason, added pieces that they needed, free agency and the draft, came on this year a bit uncertain as who they are. Are they a team that could get to this that got to the Super Bowl 2 years ago and started the season 10-1, or are they the team that finished last year awful as they were? Or are they somewhere in the middle? What is your opinion of who they are and what will define a successful season in 2024? And if they don't meet those expectations, would it be time for wholesale changes such as quarterback and head coach? Go to Jason.
I think they have too many holes to fill. I think the holes kind of became apparent as the season went on last year, especially defensively. I think, a lot of your main players, like you lost Kelsey. That's a big loss. He wasn't as good as he had been, but he was still pretty damn good. And now you lose your anchor in the middle of your offensive line. I think Lane Johnson is a year older, and I think that's going to start to be an issue. You lost Fletcher Cox. He was another guy who was slipping a little bit, but he was still pretty good in the middle of that. You lost both of the middles of your line. I just think they have too many holes. I'm not a big believer in Hurts, to be honest with you. I don't know. I still have my questions about Hurts. I think the best you could hope for them this year is, they could probably win a division, because really it's Dallas is their only kind of competition in the East. So you win a division and maybe win a playoff game. I think that should be considered a success.
Is that what you would consider a success?
I would think. I mean, I just don't. I kind of think they're on the downside. Your main your best players are either now gone or kind of getting old.
I mean, I think it's considered a success if you're a realist and you take a step back and look at the team. If you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan, that's not considered a success. But yeah, if you take a step back and look at the team, and I'll step in here. So to Jason's point with their holes, they do have to fill a lot of holes, and they got to fill with rookies. First and second and third year players at most, but a lot of young players. And I mean, if we go through Howie Roseman's career, like when he drafts, what rookies step right in and make impacts? I mean, Carter did last year for the first half of the season and kind of fell apart. So you have all those holes that are being filled with a lot of young players. And I'm not, I mean, I don't need to sugarcoat it like Jason kind of should. I'm not a Hurts fan at all. I think he is a problem on the team. I think some of the issues that the offense had where we blame the coaching staff is because of Hurts' deficiencies, and the coaching staff identifying Hurts isn't able to do certain things. Now this year he has Barkley, he has a running back and catch passes, he has raw receivers, he has, so no more excuses. Look, I say all this, but during this, I'm going to pick him every game. So you could don't hold me to this. Don't hold me to this, but I mean, I would agree with Jason. I think this is the only reason why they could win the division is because they have division's not very. Dallas looks like they really nothing to make their team better. So they could potentially still win the division with they do have talent. Don't get me wrong. But I don't see that elite level talent. unless these rookies do, these cornerbacks become like shutdown cornerbacks, and now their defense looks like a totally different team. Carter takes an unbelievable leap from year 1 to year 2. Kelsey was actually, although we thought Kelsey was the best, was slipping in his older age, and Dickerson or Juergens is actually better than Kelsey's been. But that's a lot of ifs and buts. So, I don't like to go into seasons with a strong prediction with a lot of ifs. So I would agree with Jason.
Chuck?
Say probably somewhere in between the Super Bowl team and the team that looked like absolute garbage last year. I mean, like you said, they were playing like one of the worst teams in the league. I don't think they'll be that bad. I think you could end up 11-6 again, but have a completely successful season just on the way the games play out. Like 11-6 at the beginning of last year, whatever, would have been like, okay, it's fairly reasonable. They went to the Super Bowl, there's no the hangover. But it's the way they ended the year to get to 11-6, and some of the teams they lost to that, you made it such a bad taste in your mouth to end the year. There was a lot, we'll probably never know the full story when it went on in that locker room, but it was clear that players on both sides of the ball had lost confidence in the coaching staff on both sides, and whether that's right or wrong, what happened, and that's not good. So you got to hope that coaching staff changes will help improvement. But what Tommy said is that, yeah, you got young kids in a lot of these positions, and maybe they can be, they drafted the first cornerback in the draft, and he was the guy that was number 1 or 2 on everybody's draft board for the most part. Maybe he's a stud in 2 years, 3 years, but that's 2 or 3 years down the road. So, I mean, a playoff win and getting like the second round and losing a close game was a success. If they make it to the NFC Championship again, I think that's complete success. I don't know that I can think of them as a Super Bowl contender without seeing them play some games yet. But, if you look at the rest of the NFC, San Francisco will be there. Detroit's improved. Can they keep it up? Can Green Bay stay good? And once you get past that, you got teams that have a lot of questions that might get better, but aren't anywhere near as proven as some of these Eagles teams have been. So, they could catch lightning in a bottle, but I think realistically they're a playoff team second round. And that would be successful in my mind.
So before,
Yeah.
go ahead, Meeker.
Go ahead.
No, I was
going to say, like, I think in the NFC, they have a better shot at being able to get back to where they were than if they were playing the AFC. How they play in the NFC. So that's the new, that's the situation. But yeah, I would agree that, if you get back to 11-6, win a playoff game after the disaster that was last season, it saves the coach's job. I don't think that they're going to let the coach go if that's the case. Now, if you fall 8-9 out of the playoffs, don't look good, I think you're going to see some big changes.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot's going to be dependent on Hurts too. Like if Hurts shows that skill set and it looks like, hey, coaches are not doing their job. But if like it's Hurts and it visibly hurts the problem, I don't know if the coach, I mean, how do you go and blame the coaching staff? So I think it's all going to be dependent on kind of how the team looks as well. Obviously.
I was just going to say, before we jump off of football, I do have a future bet. I was looking around at MVP odds. Why is Jared Goff 40-1 for MVP? I mean, I think that's crazy odds on him. If Detroit takes the next step and becomes, the top seed in the NFC or whatever, that offense is still pretty good. I thought 40-1 on him is insane. Get that on DraftKings. I put a bet on that today.
Yeah, it's a good one. All right, I got one more before we're done for the night. And this doesn't have to do with any Philadelphia sports teams in general. Since we have been sports fans as young boys in the 70s and into the 80s, sports has changed quite a bit. The leagues have added a lot more playoff teams. Technology has changed the way we watch games, how we analyze them, how players are used, how they're officiated, and how much exposure sports has is more than ever. Is this a good thing, or do you find yourself with sports exhaustion? Do you love sports as much as you did then, or more or less? And what about your answer leads you to think that? And what would you change in sports to make it better for you, better experience for you, Tommy?
I mean, I think that's always you're always you're always going to think the era you grew up watching as a kid is the best era of sport. And you're always going to think, I don't like, and I think that has to do with circumstance. Like, I mean, I watched more sports when I was younger and a kid than I do now. Why? I have kids now. I have this now. I mean, there's just reasons, there's life things that get in the way. So my ability to follow sports as much is less than it may have been as a kid, where I'm outside playing, I'm mimicking the swing of a certain player. So I think some of that is always going to be, my era was better than that era. No, I mean, I think the wussification of some of the sports has made the sports worse in my eyes. Like hockey, for instance, football with some of the. Do I understand why they're doing it? Yeah, of course. I mean, we understand the injury behind it. But watching like some of those hits in football, and thinking guys like Brian Dawkins would probably not even be relevant in today's game, because of the hits he made, or some of the legendary hockey fights and games we watch. And so yeah, I mean, I think that back then was better, of course, but technology. I would love for somebody to go back and use technology to see how many games of importance would have been changed because the ref blew a call and instant replay would have fixed that. We might be talking about championships that Philly, Flyers beat the Oilers, right? In that offside with the offsides in the one
Islanders.
or Islanders in the one game. So there's so much like technology has changed the way the sport is. But no, overall, I mean, I think sports was better at, a certain time, but I do think it partly because I was a kid and I was playing it, and and you live and die and all your friends are playing it and talking about it than where it is today. And the oversaturation words. I mean, honestly, I'm not watching like a lot of those debate shows, ESPN shows. So, outside of Twitter and different things like that, I'm not getting oversaturated with sports. If I don't want to watch them, like something, I don't watch it, so, but I do think the wussification, to steal what was it, Ed Rendell's term a little bit, has brought sports down.
Chalky.
It's it's interesting because I was thinking about it in a slightly different way. I mean, like Tommy said, as a kid growing up, it was more about living and dying with the teams because we didn't have real life scenarios to worry about as much. I don't think any of us worried about his school, so much as like, something maybe at work or a job or kids or whatever it is, like the real life stuff that we deal with as adults, to where as an adult, I can still enjoy the high of the really great moment. But when the Eagles lose, when I was in high school or even college, in 20s, if they lost on a Sunday, I was miserable for the whole week, and I would torture myself by listening to WIP. And then now it's like, unless the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl or Phillies in the playoffs, like I don't even turn that on because it's nonsense. But where I was kind of thinking about you talk about the technology. So, the one of the big stories this week is that it seems like TNT is losing the NBA package and it's going back to NBC, perhaps, who hasn't had it since 2002, I think. And we'll see, but I always liked the NBC games because that was the game of the week. And you got maybe 3 national games a week to watch. And the Sixers were terrible during the 90s. Now, you go on and forget the fact that you can watch any game online at any time or on the package on Comcast, but TNT's got a couple games a week. ESPN's got a couple games a week, and then the NBA network. So this era of you can watch any game at any time you want, to me, is more enjoyable. Do I feel myself having the need to watch that as much? No. But if I want to get MLB TV for the second half and watch my fantasy team strike out, I like having that option. And I would have killed to have that option as a kid. Like, during the summer, 10 o'clock at night, let's put, I loved San Diego when they had Sheffield and McGriff. I would have loved to be able to watch a 10 o'clock San Diego game, as the 11 or 12-year-old or whatever it was when you're in for the night in the summer. So it's not oversaturation. I like having a lot of stuff at my fingertips, but it doesn't engulf as much of my life emotionally, at least the bad stuff that doesn't anymore. So that's good, but
Yeah, one thing before Jason goes too, like and again, this is probably nostalgia, but like I go back to the days, and you guys still play fantasy sports or baseball at least, but where you would open up the newspaper and be excited to see a box score, right? You're looking at the box score. You would do your fantasy with a newspaper and a pen and paper. There was no app that tracked it for it. And that was fun. Like, that was part of it. Like, oh man, he had 2 hit players play, or this guy did this, and you're writing it down. I had the USA Today, and I opened up sports, and there was a box score, like a ball, and I looked at it, and it just looked like jumble. I'm like, well, who the hell would possibly want to look at this box? When I could just pull it up on my phone. But that was fun. Like, you look forward to that the next day, getting that paper, doing that stuff. So, that does take away like the technology aspect and all that. That was different. I mean, in that part you really enjoyed.
Jason.
Well, when I was growing up, hockey was always my favorite sport, and the issue I have now is I can't watch that league. Gary Bettman totally destroyed the league. He destroyed the sport. So I have a huge problem with that because I like I said, I can't watch a game anymore. I might throw a playoff game here and there on, but if we weren't doing this podcast right now and I had a choice of watching the Celtics Pacers or the hockey game, I would watch the Celtics Pacers. Right? I have no issues with what they've done with baseball. I think they've made some great changes with the time, the pitch clock and all that stuff. I love watching the NBA now, and obviously I love the NFL. I don't like what the NFL has done with the penalties and stuff like that, and making it like a fantasy football, offense oriented and league and giving the offense all the advantages. I don't like that, but I love watching the NFL. My issue is the NHL because it is no longer my favorite sport, and it's because Gary Bettman destroyed the league.
Yeah, and you're not alone on that because if you put the numbers down, and
I've talked to so many people who used to love hockey, my friends, and
I
they
watched
all agree with me.
all 82 games with my dad every single year. Now, whether maybe because you're younger, but I never missed the Flyers game. And now, I mean, we don't even.
But if you had that style of play again, where the Flyers are a perennial lottery team or non-playoff team, but if you have Dave Brown or a Tocchet or even some of those guys, it's like a tough. You can watch for fights. It's a physical game. Now, like even the Flyers were the best team in the league, I still wouldn't watch every night. And I tune in for the playoff game, but the just style of the game, I'm with you 100% on that. Like, it's just not game in, game out. I can't watch.
Yeah, and I agree with Jason. Baseball is the one sport that nailed it with the rule change, with the pitch clock.
They killed it.
They
after hours, 20 games.
They changed they revolutionized the game, and like it was getting rough to watch there for a while.
Yeah.
Now it's not. I mean, that was probably the best thing in sports done in like 15, 20 years that I could recall.
Yeah, I'll take a piece of almost everything each of you guys have said just for my answer. I missed the nostalgia part of it. I missed opening up the newspaper and looking at box scores as a kid. That's how we
you missed
learn
being able to get the West Coast scores sometimes because the paper had to get printed too early.
Yeah,
You had it channel 2 or channel 1 would have the crawl at the bottom. Or
man. I was when Chalky's talking about fantasy. I mean, and we might have talked about the number was like 1-800-SCORES. So I'm at work working at Modell's, and I'm calling every 5 minutes, and it's like 4 minutes left in the game. Like, it's 4 minutes, and you're just waiting for the score to change. I mean, that just won't ever. Yeah,
Baltimore was slaughtered by number 1.
I mean, that's true. That actually was true.
At the same time of saying that, even though I missed that, like at the same time saying that, I can't imagine being without like my phone giving me updates on every single swing and miss, doing fantasy baseball and all that stuff. When it comes to football, I mean, I don't think America can't get enough football. I mean, we just love football. I find it, crazy that we have to have, a game on Thursday and Sunday, bunch of Sunday 1, Sunday 4, Sunday night, Monday night. Now they're adding games on Christmas, on Wednesday. They're traveling to different countries, whatever.
Just go watch it. Go watch it.
I get it. I don't have to watch it. I think but we're talking about whether it's oversaturated. I think it might be a little. I think it does water down the product a little bit to oversaturate. And I'm talking about
Yeah,
every
but
sport,
imagine
not
right
just
now,
football.
like Jason said, the hot playoffs are on. There's basketball playoffs, whatever, and whatever Thursday night, and the Texans are playing the Browns. You would be excited that the Texans are playing the Browns right now,
Yeah,
and you could watch a football game, and you would
yeah,
watch that
I
game
agree.
and flip to the other
I agree.
sports.
If you don't want to watch it, just don't watch it.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think all sports are a little bit overexposed, and then it takes a little bit, I don't know, of the intrigue of that whole, like I learn more about sports now, I think, than I ever have as a kid because of the saturation, because of how many radio shows are just sports related. There's 10 of them on Sirius XM. You can turn on any channel on Sirius and get a little bit more well-rounded, and they don't talk about Philadelphia sports. I never listen to Philadelphia sports radio anymore, ever. And everything I listen to is now more national, so I'm more well-rounded, which is what I do like about it. But I guess like you said, Tommy, it's like more like when you're playing sports as a kid, when you're following your team live or die, and you don't have the adult problems you have, in life that takes you away from it. You're more excited about it than you are as an adult. But there's some things about, like, yeah, the technology has helped correct things with the game, but it also does make it a little bit, it slows down the pace of the game, like basketball, especially when they're reviewing every other foul these days, with these challenges. It gets just that annoys me a little bit. Overall, yeah, I was a bigger sports fan as a kid than I am as an adult, but that just comes with being an adult. But I do have some problems with some of the exhaustion I get from all this talking heads talking about it all the time. Fantasy football, with have housewives winning fantasy leagues and know nothing about football. Like, everyone deems themselves a fan when they really aren't, and they really don't know as much as they like to lead on that they do, because of the saturation, how much they get from, media and so forth. So that would be my opinion.
Yeah, I think
Anyway,
Chalky
Like,
nailed it.
create a podcast nowadays, though. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Right.
dope.
yeah, we're a perfect example of the oversaturation of sports.
But some of it is just the same thing you would have did as a kid at the schoolyard, where you're just bullshitting about sports, or you're just now putting it on, onto a platform.
right.
Well, and when you're older, you don't have the ability to sit here and talk. Can't, besides text, I'm not going to talk to Jason about sports because I don't see him enough, so this gives us a platform to do the same thing. But I think Chalky hit it probably pretty well, where it's like the highs and lows. Like, I mean, he's right. I remember when the Eagles lost the Super Bowl 2 years ago to the Chiefs. Like, I was pissed off that night. I was pissed off. And then you're like, whatever. I mean, your life goes on. Where when you're in 2004, when I was a little, younger, and the Eagles lost, like, or 93 when the Phillies lost in the World Series, that stays with you for a much longer period of time, to the point where I still can feel that 93 World Series loss, where it affects me, where I almost forgot the Eagles played in the Super Bowl against KC 2 years back, so definitely that the highs and lows is one thing that, as now, it doesn't hit you as much.
And just I guess because of the money that's involved in sports, and the money they're paying these players, has caused that wussification. I mean, it's big investments in these guys, and that's the reason why they changed the rules to protect them, is because they're huge investments.
I mean, nobody wants to tune in and watch the third string quarterback play against another third string quarterback. I get it.
That's the whole thing with the NBA. To get into a game now, if you're paying $150 for like seat, and it's like, is Steph Curry going to play tonight, or is Kawhi going to sit? Like, I mean, that's a problem. Like, with people, especially if people want to travel and see a team, you might not see those guys like at all. And NBA is at their problem more than anybody else, but it affects them.
You know what though? The NFL keeps adding games. I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing, like, let me sit this quarterback. Maybe I'm going to give him an extra bye week here against this team. Have that backup quarterback who can play, and you play that guy instead of playing your superstar to, because you're ramping up your.
I think with the elimination of the second bye in each league, that's going to be definitely more in the minds where it's like a week 17 or week 18 game now. even if it doesn't mean anything, you're going to be more likely to sit your starting quarterback if he's got to play next week than if you had that extra week and it's 2 weeks in between. You might be a little more hesitant to do that for the other team. But if they get to it's not if, it's when they get to 18 games, they're going to have 2 buys built into the season. They'll have to structure it however. But
one of the things I failed to mention too is that I think that the regular season has become, way watered down, and that's why they rest these guys in the NBA. There's just way too many teams in the playoffs. I mean, that don't deserve to be there, in my opinion. Baseball has added 4 teams since we've started in each league since we started
Yeah,
watching
but the
sports.
thing with baseball is those teams have been affected. That
They have.
card.
Yeah. Anyway,
All right.
that's it. Yeah, 5 questions.
All right.
Got
Very
some,
good.
got some big shows coming up, right?
Yeah. So next week we're gonna do the baseball, right? The third.
Yeah,
of
we'll do third of the season will be over. So maybe give some new bets out if we have them, or just review, what's going on.
And then the Belmont would be the following week.
Yes, sir.
And
US
US Open would be the following week after that. Start to get closer to football and basketball. We might learn more about where the Sixers are. So yeah. So next week it looks like a baseball, and we're gonna go back to baseball. Obviously, the Phillies are tremendous right now, so that'll be a focus point. But this was episode 108, Broad Street Hustle, brought to you by Giovanina's Pizza. You tried the rest, now try the best. Grandma just makes it better. Have a great night.